Can you tell us about today's dispute?
Well, we're not in dispute today. We've got a lobby of Parliament organised by the TUC. This is a little RMT fringe, if you like, on the edges of that, because we've got a live dispute on National Rail, the National Network Rail and the train operating companies, and of course London Underground, and we're taking action next week because there's no settlement to the dispute. And what the Tory government is doing now, as they're losing the argument and losing public opinion, I think, is moving against the trade unions so that we are no longer able to take effective strike action going forward. So they think that will close down protest, close down dissent, and allow them to impose these changes and these cuts that we're going to see in the budget in a couple of weeks' time. So it's a really important turning point, I think, in our country, where we've got to show that we're not going to accept these infringements of human rights and infringements on the right to strike.
You could say that the UK has some of the strictest union laws in Europe, stricter, well, just Russia is the exception. How does today's measures, how do they make you feel?
Well, it's made me sad since the early 80s when we had Tebbett's law that restricted us, and we've got round all of those hurdles. We had a new set of laws in 2016 which put limits on what we could do, and we've got past those. So every time they bring in hurdles, we get past them. But now what they're saying is, although you beat every hurdle in terms of voting, notification, notices to the companies, you're now going to have to get your people, instruct them by name to go to work when they've already voted for strike action. I mean, that would be like, we had a referendum on Brexit. That would be like instructing the government to say you've got to stay in Europe. We take votes on whether to have a strike or not. We comply with the law, and now they want to make it nearly impossible for us to take any effective action.
If this does go forward, will you be telling your union not to go to work, to cross the picket, sorry?
Well, we've got to see what the law says, because they've already withdrawn it. They brought it out last week and exposed it to air and water. It already seems to be a bit wonky. We think it's illegal what they're doing under the International Labour Conventions, maybe under the European human rights legislation and our own human rights legislation. So we've got to see what it actually says when it gets through Parliament, and that's the job of the parliamentarians, to scrutinise that. And then when we see what it means, we may challenge that in court, and we'll have to see what we can do to get round it. But what it will mean if we don't instruct people to go to work, or if members don't comply with the company's instructions to go to work, they can be sacked. So they can be sacked for taking lawful industrial action. They will make illegal what is currently lawful, and it's lawful under their legislation, because of course they were in power when they brought in the last set of laws, and all the anti-union laws have been brought in by the Tories. So we comply with everything they want to do, and they say that's not good enough. What they should do is try and resolve the disputes and be agents of goodwill in the dispute and try and get us all together so we can get a settlement.
Why do you think this government is so intent on cracking down on unions?
Because they need an enemy. They are trying to make the trade unions an enemy. At the start of this process in March and April this year, they thought the RMT would be crushed. They thought that public opinion would be against us. And as we've seen throughout the summer and now into the winter, I think the public are behind us, because the public, the men and women of this country, are fed up of being treated shabbily at work, and they want a better deal for themselves. They want the cost of living crisis to be resolved, and they want their terms and conditions strengthened as well, the same as what we're after.
I don't know if you read this morning, but certain councils in the UK have been told to prepare for blackouts this winter. I just wanted to hear your response to that.
Well, it's showing us that we haven't got wealth distributed properly. We've got resources in this country to run our economy and to create an energy distribution system that is based on need of the people and need of the economy and the need of the environment. What we've got at the minute is we've privatised all that. And let's not forget, BP and British Gas were publicly owned companies. We could set the price that they distribute energy on, but we don't do that. We allow the market to dictate that, and the market is impoverishing our people, and the market may freeze our people and kill some of our vulnerable people going forward. That is entirely unacceptable. The government should take steps immediately to sequestrate energy, to nationalise it and distribute it on a fair basis. That's the emergency measures that we need now.
Do you think Rishi Sunak's going to do that?
No, I don't, and that's why we've got to have a change. He could be forced into doing it if the people come out. We need the people to join in these protests, but also join up those other protests about the cost of housing, the way that people are taxed, the way that wealth is distributed, and the way that energy is generated and distributed. All of those things are linked together, and they're all on the basis that we're ripped off, the rich get richer, and the poor can go and do one, basically, and we've got to change that equation.
Just a quick one on channel crossings. I know you've got an RMT branch down in Folkestone. What do you think about the government's response to refugees crossing the channel?
Well, we've got members in Dover and in Kent. We've got members working on the railway and on the ferries. We've got members that are duty bound to rescue people while they're at sea. I think it's outraged. Calling people escaping from war, natural disasters, and of course poor economies, escaping from poverty, which isn't a crime. Calling them invaders is invoking stuff that we don't need. We're trying to make a united society. We're trying to bring people together, no matter what their backgrounds. And using that kind of remark is totally unacceptable. Putting people in tents, essentially, during the middle of a coming winter is not acceptable. We've got to treat people humanely. We've got to have laws that are up to everybody else's standards. The Europeans take far more refugees than we do. We've got to do our share and treat people properly, humanely, and with some dignity. Look after them and their children. That's what British people, I think, stand for, and that's what we should have a system based on.
Is it time for Suella Braverman to go?
It's always time for Suella Braverman to go. She should never have been in the first place, and the quicker she goes, the better it will be for everyone.